Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Tutorlini Test Prep. Today I'll be providing a full walkthrough of the Digital SAT Math Practice Test number 10. I highly recommend you complete the exam yourself in the Bluebook app before watching this video. Let's get started with Module 1. Okay, this is the beginning of Module 1, Question 1. I go over this in great detail in my Autotono number 20 on probability. Definitely go check that out. So probability is desired outcomes over total. Little confusing because we wouldn't say we desire something to be defective, but it does ask us the probability that the bead has a defect. So 29 of them have a defect out of a total of 100. So the probability is 29 over 100. That doesn't simplify, but even if it did, they didn't simplify it in the choices. We get choice C. Okay, question 2. So they told us that we're concerned about the speed when the car is 5 seconds after it began to accelerate. That's essentially just telling us, since t is the seconds, that t is equal to 5. So I'm going to take t equals 5 and put it into this equation. So s equals 40 plus 3 times 5. So we get s equals 40 plus 15, which gives us a speed of 55 miles per hour, which is choice D. Okay, question 3. So I'm noticing that if I take this equation and multiply it by 6, I'll get 24x. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply the whole equation by 6. 24x equals 6 times 3, which is 18. And that gives us choice C. We can also do this on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I typed in the equation, and I get a solution of 0.75. How about I call the solution A? And then it wants to find 24x, or 24a. And we also get 18. Okay, question 4. So for this one, we're just going to use our knowledge of slope and y-intercept. M is the slope, B is the y-intercept. When a line is trending upward, the slope is positive. And when a line is trending downward, the slope is negative. I look at this line and I see that the line is trending upwards as we go left to right. So the slope must be positive. And as for the y-intercept, I look at the y-intercept right here and it's somewhere around like positive 3, something like that. So the y-intercept B must also be positive. I don't even need to do any math. The only answer choice with a positive slope and a positive y-intercept is A. As you can see, B is wrong because it's got a negative y-intercept. C is wrong because it's got a negative slope. And D is wrong because it's got a negative slope and a negative y-intercept. Okay, question 5. I go over this in great detail in my Autotento number 1 on percent, so definitely check that out. If you want to solve this by setting up a proportion, you could do that part over whole equals percent over 100. You could also just do part over whole times 100. So that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter. So the percent of is equal to 234,000 over 300,000 times 100. I'm just going to put that in a calculator. And I'm getting a percent of 78. So it's 78% of them are size large, which is choice D. Okay, question 6. So whenever I have y equals mx plus b form, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Y-intercepts always occur when x equals 0. So I see I have an x of 0, so the y-coordinate of the y-intercept must be 18. So that means b is equal to 18. So right away, without really doing anything, I noticed that these two choices are wrong because they don't have 18 as a y-intercept. So I now have it down to 2, and I pretty much just need to figure out the slope. So why don't I do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1? And how about I use the bottom 2 points? So I'll do 8 minus 13 over 2 minus 1. And I get negative 5 over 1, which is just negative 5. So the slope is negative 5, so the equation is y equals negative 5x plus 18. That is choice D. We could also do this question entirely on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I made a table and typed in the data. Now I'm going to click on this little automatic regression symbol, and it does a linear regression, and it tells me the equation is y equals negative 5x plus 18. Okay, question 7. So we want to find f of 2. So we're going to replace all the x's with 2. So 2 squared plus 2 plus 71. 2 squared is 4. So I get 4 plus 2, that's 6. 6 plus 71 is 77. And that is our answer. We can also do this on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I just typed in the function. Now I'm going to type in f of 2. And I also get 77. Okay, question 8. So when we multiply by a common base, we add the exponents. Might be helpful if I remind you that just m here, that has an exponent of 1. Okay? So m to the 4th times m to the 1. 4 plus 1 is 5, so that's m to the 5. Now I'll do the q's. Q to the 4th times q to the 5th. 4 plus 5 is 9, so it's q to the 9. And then negative 1 plus 3 is 2, so we get z to the power of 2. And that gives us choice B. We could also do this on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I just picked random positive numbers for m, q, and z. And then I typed in the original and then our answer, and you can see we get the same thing. I bet if you typed in A, C, or D, you would not get the same number, so they would be wrong. Okay, question 9. So I just made a little drawing. When I first read it, it kind of seemed like ABC was the bigger triangle and XYZ was the smaller triangle. But really important, guys, notice how when I drew it, I went in the same direction as the similarity statement. So like ABC, and then I started from the same spot and did XYZ. You got to make sure the corresponding angles are obvious to you when you're making your drawing. Anyway, let's start labeling stuff. So they told us AB is 170 and the length of BC is 850. And the length of YZ is 60. What is the length of XY? Okay, so I'm going to call this little x. And now I'm going to write a proportion. I like to do big over small. So corresponding big over corresponding small. So 850 over 60. 850 over 60 equals corresponding big over corresponding small. 170 over x. 170 over x. I'm now going to cross multiply, so I get 850x equals 170 times 60, which is 10,200. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 850. And I get x equals 12. And that gives us choice D. Okay, question 10. There's a couple ways to think about this one, but I don't know. How about this? How about I'll isolate for n? Because after all, that's what they're asking us, right? I don't want that n to be in the denominator, so I'm going to multiply both sides by n. So I get 24x over y equals 4n. Multiply both sides by n. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So I get 6x over y equals n. Just to recap, guys, I multiplied both sides by n, and then I divided both sides by 4. All right, so we get n equals 6x over y, or another way to write that is 6 and then times x over y. And they told us x over y is 4. So n is basically just 6 times 4, which is 24. And that is our answer. Okay, question 11. So this is a line in slope-intercept form. They didn't really give me any information to go off of. So just from me having practiced a bunch, I'm already thinking they're probably asking me for the slope or the y-intercept. First, let me put it in slope-intercept form so it's more clear to you guys. So the equation is w of t, so I just call that w equals, and then 300 minus 4t, I'm going to rearrange it. Negative 4t plus 300. And you see, oh, the slope is negative 4. and the y-intercept is positive 300. So the question says, what is the predicted volume? Draining from the container each second. So each is like a slope keyword, and the slope is the change in y when x goes up by 1. Oh, well, you could see y is the w, the volume, and x is the time when time goes up by 1. In other words, each second's going up by 1. Anyway, that word each or per, if you see that, it's probably talking about slope. So the slope is -4. The answer is just +4, simply because it already says draining. Like, you don't, when you phrase the negative in your English language talking, you don't have to write the negative. Okay, question 12. So, question's asking us, for how many values of x does f of x equal 0? F of x is synonymous with y. So, in other words, the question's asking us, where does y equal 0? Well, as you can see, based on this little chart I made on the left, y equals 0 means we're talking about x-intercepts. So we're going to look for how many x-intercepts. That's what they're asking us. It's just kind of confusing the way they worded it. So I'm going to look at the x-axis and see how many times the graph meets it. 1, 2, 3. There appears to be 3 x-intercepts, which gives us choice C. Okay, question 13. I have a series of 3 shorts called Exponentials plus Time. So go to my YouTube Shorts tab and watch those 3 shorts, Exponentials plus Time. All right, so this is a basic exponential, y equals a times b to the x, where a is the initial value. In other words, the y-intercept. And b is the multiplier. So I see right away that the number they're asking us about, 3,000, is the a. It's the number in front. So it's the y-intercept. Y-intercepts always have an x of 0. So 0, 3,000 is a point on this graph. That's what that's telling me. All right. And if you weren't convinced, go graph it on Desmos. You can see the y-intercept very clearly. All right. So now let's interpret. I'm not even looking at the choices. Okay. So this is x. And then the number outside the function is your y. The letter outside the function is your y. So this guy is f. Okay, so when x equals 0, and what does x equals 0 mean? What does it say x is? It says that years after 2008. So when x equals 0 years after 2008, well, 2008 plus 0 is still just 2008. So in other words, that's just saying the year 2008. Okay, and then it says f equals 3,000. Well, let's see what f is talking about. So the given function, f, estimates the species' population. Okay, so there's a 3,000 population. Now that I have that written down, and I'm pretty confident I know what it means, now I'm going to look at the answer choices so I don't get tricked. So the estimated percent decrease, that doesn't seem right. It just tells us the population is 3,000. That doesn't seem right. The estimated population for this species and area, it says 8 years after 2008? No, we said it's 0 years after 2008. So it seems like all 3 of these are wrong. Let's see what's right about D. So we see the word initial. Oh, that's the one we talked about, initial value. We see the word population. And we see 2008. Again, 0 years after 2008 just means you're in 2008. Think 2008 plus 0, just 2008. So one of these answer choices is like kind of right, but it's talking about something else. It's not perfect, but B is like kind of talking about the 0.75. So I go over this in my percents video. If you have a percent multiplier and then you take away 1 and then multiply it by 100, you can figure out the percent change. So basically the 0.75 is saying that the population is decreasing by 25% each year. That's what the negative 25 means. It's a 25% decrease. So B maybe would have been right if the question asked you about 0.75, but it wasn't. It was asking you about the 3,000, so it's got to be D. Okay, question 14. I go over this in great detail, guys, in my auto channel number 13 on basic quadratics. There's lots of examples, notes, and a free worksheet. Please go check it out. So, the question, it's got a quadratic function, and it's talking about the minimum. So right away, I know it wants me to figure out the vertex. As soon as it mentions minimum or maximum, I know it's talking about the vertex. Specifically, it says what value of x. So we call the vertex h comma k. So it's asking us to find h. Well, this is in standard form. So to quickly find the vertex from that, I can use the equation h equals negative b over 2a. One of the most important equations on the test, so easy to forget. So ax squared plus bx plus c, a is 1, b is negative 14, and c is 22. So we're going to do negative 14 over 2 times 1. So I get 14 over 2, which is 7, which is our answer. We can also do this entirely on Desmos, so let's go do that. All right, so I typed in the function, and now I'm just going to zoom out and look where the vertex is. I'll double click on it. How about I even label it? And it's 7 comma negative 27. Because it says what value of x, I need to pick 7. If it said what is the minimum value of the function, then it wants to know the y value. So I would pick negative 27. But for this one, we wanted 7. Okay, question 15. I go over this in great detail, guys, on my Autochento number 10 area and volume scale factors. Please, please, please just go watch it before you even watch this part of the video. Like, it might not make any sense. This is one of the most confusing things. People tend to forget it. It's just a random geometry concept that we tend to forget. Please go watch that video. All right, so it says that I can only use scale factors when two shapes are similar. And you'll notice this question has no mention of similarity. However, I go over this in the video. Squares are special types of shapes that are always similar. They don't need to tell me. Think about it. Squares always have the same shape, right? They always look the same. Their sides are always in the same ratio. So squares are always similar. So I can use scale factors. So this sentence here is telling me the side lengths of A, that's why I drew A to be bigger, are 166 times the side lengths of square B. So that's telling us that the linear scale factor, which I refer to as capital K, is 166. In other words, these side lengths are 166 times as big. I go over this in the video. This question is essentially just, this part of the question is essentially just asking us for the area scale factor. Well, the area scale factor of any similar figure is equal to k squared. So we're going to do 166 squared. And that is going to give me some really big number. 27556. And so that means the area is times 27556, which is what k is in this question. So that is the answer, 27556. You might not have had too much trouble with this one, and you might even be able to brainstorm some other way using the formula for the area of a square. You could pick random numbers and solve it that way. Sure. However, these questions get way harder, guys. So if you do not understand this, you're going to be in trouble in the long term. So please go watch that video, Autochento number 10. Okay, question 16. We really want to get B. I'm going to use elimination for this one. It seems like eliminating A is going to be super straightforward because they both have a 2 in front of them. So how about this? How about I just multiply the second one by -1, and then I'll add them. So 2A plus 8B equals 198. -2A minus 4B equals -98. Now I'm going to add the two equations now that the A's have opposite sign and the same magnitude. 2A plus -2A, that's 0. He just goes away. 8B plus -4B, that's 4B. And then 198 plus -98, that's 100. We're going to divide both sides by 4, and I get B equals 25, which is our answer. We can also do this entirely on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I just typed in the two equations, but instead of A and B, I typed in X and Y. Just make sure you're careful, you know which one you did which. So I made AX and I made BY. Now I'm going to zoom in to see where the two solutions where the two lines meet, and I get a solution of negative 1 comma 25. B is the y value, so our answer is 25. Okay, question 17. So we want to find the y-intercept. Whenever we want to find a y-intercept, we set x equal to 0. So I'm going to set x equal to 0. I get f of 0 equals negative 8, 2 to the 0 plus 22. 2 to the 0 is 1. So negative 8 times 1 is negative 8. And negative 8 plus 22 is 14. So we get a y-intercept of 0, comma 14. And that gives us choice A. The common trap answer here, guys, is negative 8. So lots of people would look at this and think, oh, y equals a times b to the x. Oh, so a is the y-intercept. But you'll notice they have this plus 22 here, and it's no longer in that same form, so you can't just use that interpretation. When in doubt, always just make x equals 0. Or even better, why don't you just graph it? So let's go do that now. Okay, so I just typed in the function, then I typed in f of 0, and I got 14. You could also just click on the y-intercept, and again, we get 0, comma 14. Okay, question 18. I have 3 shorts going over this, guys. Go to my shorts tab. They're all called exponentials plus time. Please go watch those. This will make way more sense. All right, so they're testing us on this equation, a times b to the x over n. I see that a is the initial value, and they tell me the initial value, or y-intercept, is 200. So I'm going to put y equals 200. B is the multiplier. Increases by a factor is just a fancy way of saying multiply by. So the multiplier is 4. And then n is the interval, and they tell me the interval, the multiplier gets applied for each increase of 1 in the value of x. So the interval is 1. So that's our equation. X divided by 1 is just x. So the equation must be y equals 204 to the x. And that gives us choice D. I was just going over all that to help you guys understand for harder questions. I'm pretty sure you could do this. If you just go graph 0, 200 and plot all these, the only one that goes through 0, 200 is D. So you really didn't need to understand like any of the question to get it right. I just went over that because you're going to come across harder ones where making these exponential equations from scratch is far more important. Okay, question 19. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 21 on unit circle trigonometry. Definitely go check that out. All right, so first things first. I noticed it's in radians. 42 pi is in radians. There's no degree symbol. So I'm going to change it to degrees just to make it easier for me to understand. That's probably a good idea. So to do that, I'm going to multiply by 180 over pi. That's how you convert from radians to degrees. And I'm getting 7,560 degrees. Now what we can do is we can find a coterminal angle between 0 and 360 by repeatedly, in this case, because it's a really big number, we want to subtract to make it smaller. So let's come over here. 7560 minus 360 minus 360. Okay, I want to keep going until I am between. There's better ways to do this, making sliders and stuff, but I don't know, it won't take me that long. I'm gonna keep taking away 360 until it's small enough. I'm almost there. Okay, I'm pretty sure we got 360. You could also make it 0. So I'm going to go with 0. Because usually we don't include 360. It's like include 0, exclude 360. It doesn't matter. You get the same answer. So I'm going to do 0. So let's look at the unit circle. And I don't even need to draw a reference triangle or anything. 0 degrees is right here. And on the unit circle, the coordinates of this point are 1, 0. And cosine, CS, computer science, cosine is the x coordinate, and y and sine is the y coordinate. So the sine of 42 pi must be 0, which is choice A. We can also do this on Desmos, so let's go do that. So you can actually do sine on Desmos, there's a keypad menu at the bottom, but first, before you do anything, open up the wrench and then make sure it's in radian mode. It defaults to radian mode, but if you wanted degrees, you'd have to change it. So I've got it in radian mode, and you can click on the keypad to find sine. It's under the trig function, or you can just type in sine, parentheses, 42 pi, and it tells me 0. Notice one shortcoming with this, and I go over this in the Ototento video, guys, go watch it, is that Desmos cannot handle like irrationals very well. So if the answer was root 2 over 2, that would be kind of troublesome. So I recommend doing this on a scientific calculator, even though it worked out nicely. So let me show you the one I use. Okay, so this is the physical scientific calculator I bring with me to the exam. So I'm in radian mode, so I'm good. I'm just going to type in sine of 42 pi, and I get 0. So you'll notice this is a lot more helpful. If I wanted to do, say, sine of pi over 4, then it gives me the exact simplified answer, which is often helpful. Okay, question 20. I go over this in great detail, guys, in my Ototento number 6 on linear systems. Please, it's the best video I've ever made. You should go watch it. There's a lot of examples and a free worksheet where you can try out all the strategies that I lay out. All right, so I'm just going to assume you've already watched it. So this is pretty much a standard form question. It wants me to get it in standard form. If I put it in slope-intercept, I'm going to get lots of fractions, and they'll probably lead to me making a mistake, so I'm not going to do that. So let me see. It seems like, looking at what we want it to look like, that this is the only guy that's out of place, so I'm going to move him to the other side. So if I subtract 9y from both sides, I get 4x negative 18y equals 5. That one's good, so we don't need to worry about him anymore. Now the only one out of place in the second one is this 4x. So I'm going to subtract 4x to the other side. And really important, I'm going to put it in front. So negative 4x plus hy equals 2. Now the question tells me we have no solution. As I go over in the video, for these types of problems, that means a over d equals b over e, which is not equal to c over f. So let's look at all these coefficients and stuff. So I got these guys, I got these guys, and I got these guys. So we can write 4 over negative 4 equals negative 18 over h, which is not equal to 5 over 2. We don't really care what it's not equal to for this problem, so let's just look over here. If I cross multiply, I get 4h equals negative 18 times negative 4, which is 72. And now I divide both sides by 4, and I get h is equal to 18, which is choice D. These problems get way harder, so please make sure you know how to do them. We can also do this one entirely on Desmos because it's multiple choice, so let's go do that. Okay, I typed in the original system, and no solution should look like parallel lines, so A can't be right. Let's try 0. Those also have one solution, that can't be right. Let's try 9. Those also have one solution, that can't be right. Let's try 18. 18 seems to be parallel, so this system has no solution. Remember, guys, they make these way harder, and they make them student-produced response, so you can't just guess and check like that. Make sure you understand what we did up on the whiteboard. Okay, question 21. I go over this in great detail in my Ototento number 19 on quadratic formula, so definitely go check that out. I know we should use quadratic formula because there's like this plus square root here. I'm going to do negative b plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A is 1, b is minus 2, and c is negative 9. So we're going to put that all in, and we get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 9 over 2 times 1. Okay, so now I'm going to like clean up these like three kind of areas of the formula. So negative 2, that's 2. 2 times 1, that is also 2. And then root What do we have here? Negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 9. I'm getting 40. The next step is to simplify the radical. The largest perfect square that goes into 40 is 4. So I could rewrite this as 4 times 10. Pull out the 4, square root of 4 is 2. This would be 2 root 10. So I'm going to come like over here, and I'm going to do 2 plus or minus 2 root 10 over 2. Now we can split the fraction. 2 over 2 is just 1. And then 2 root 10 over 2 is just root 10. So we get 1 plus or minus root 10. And if we hold up the thing from the question, 1 plus root k, hopefully you guys can see that k must be 10, which is choice B. Because this is multiple choice, we can also guess and check using Desmos. Let's go do that. Okay, so I typed in the equation. I'm going to just kind of save the two solutions. Okay, and now I'm going to type in 1 plus root k. And now I'm just going to guess and check. So let's do k equals 8. Doesn't give me one of the numbers, so that's wrong. K equals 10. Oh, gives me one of the numbers. That's right. I bet if I do 20, it's no good. Yep. And I bet if I do 40, it's also no good. Yep. So the answer is 10. However, I would actually highly suggest doing this on a scientific calculator if you can bring one with you that can do the quadratic formula. Not a lot of them can. Let me show you mine. Okay, so this is the physical calculator that I bring with me to the exam. We're just doing it on the screen so that you guys can follow. I'm going to do second polysolve. First option, I think it was A was 1, B was -2, C was -9. And then I press enter and I get 1 plus root 10 and 1 minus root 10. To match the question, we'll go with 1 plus root 10, and we still get k is 10. Okay, question 22. So I'm actually going to keep the denominator for this one. I don't know, I think it's a little easier if I just keep the denominators. I'm going to move this guy over to the other side because I noticed they have a common denominator. To do that, I'm going to subtract. So x squared over blah, 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 minus c squared over blah, blah, blah. So they have the same denominator, so I can write x squared minus c squared over root x squared minus c squared equals 39. So I just subtracted this guy over to the other side, and then because they have the same denominator, I combined them. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to square both sides to get rid of the radical. So I get x squared minus c squared squared over the square root of x squared. The square root just goes away. So x squared minus c squared equals 39 squared. I could put that in a calculator, but looking at the choices, why don't we leave it as is? Now I've got x squared minus c squared to the 2 over x squared minus c squared to the 1. We divide by a common base. Or how about this? If you'd rather, you could just write it out as x squared minus c squared times itself. That's another way to write a square. I don't know, whatever's easier for you to think of. Regardless, you see one of these is going to go away. And we're left with x squared minus c squared equals 39 squared. And now we're in business. So now we just need to solve for x. So I'm going to add c squared to both sides. And I get x squared equals 39 squared plus c squared. And now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And I get x is equal to the square root of 39 squared plus c squared. And whenever we take the square root of a square, we got to put a plus or minus on the other side. So don't forget that. That is looking a lot like the only one that looks anything like that, really, is choice D. We can also do this question, because it's multiple choice, entirely on Desmos without knowing anything about it. So let's go do that. Okay, this is a super messy equation. So if I want to get the answer, I really should break it up into a system like I did here. So y equals whatever's on the left-hand side, y equals whatever's on the right-hand side. And now it says c is a positive constant, so I'm just going to make c like 2 or something. And let's see here. We have a solution here and a solution here. So negative 39. We only care about the x coordinate because that's the x value. I'm just going to type these in manually. I think it'll be easier. So negative 39.05125. All right, and the other one, the x coordinate, again, is the solution. There was no y. I made that up, right? 39.05125. And now we're just going to start guessing and checking. Negative c. Okay, I don't get one of those numbers, so that's wrong. Negative c squared minus 39 squared. Okay, I don't get one of those numbers, so that's wrong. Now I'll do negative square root 39 squared minus c squared. Okay, it's kind of close. It's pretty close, but I still don't get one of those numbers, so that must be wrong. And now we're going to do square root c squared plus 39 squared. And we get pretty much exactly one of the numbers we got from the graph. So the only possible choice by process elimination is D. Even if I didn't know any of this algebra, I still could have gotten this one right. Okay, this is the beginning of Module 2A, question 1. So, I want to isolate for x. We're going to move the 5 first because he's farther from the x. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I get 4x equals 160. I divide both sides by 4, and I get x equals 40. We can also do this on Desmos, so let's go do that. So I just type the equation in verbatim, zoom out a little bit, and I also get 40. Okay, question 2. So it's asking us about the store employees in warehouse stores compared to supermarkets. So we're going to pick out these two numbers, 365 and 130. And it says how much greater, those are subtraction keywords. So we're going to find the positive difference. So we're going to do 365 minus 130, which is equal to 235. And that gives us choice C. Okay, question 3. So it says we want to know how many additional hours. And it says she already did 86 hours. So additional kind of means to add, right? So why don't we do 80? Why don't we call this X? The additional hour is X. And we do 86 plus X. And then it says at least 100 hours. So at least is an inequality keyword that means greater than or equal to. So I'm going to put greater than or equal to 100. Now I just subtract 86 from both sides, and I get X is greater than or equal to 14. So she needs to do at least 14 hours, which gives us choice A. Okay, question 4. So solution is a point of intersection. The two lines meet right there. Now we read the axes for the coordinates. X is -4 and Y is -3. So the solution to the system is -4 comma -3, X comma Y. And that gives us choice C. Okay, question 5. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 2 on unit conversions. They told us the mass is 39 kilograms. So now we're going to set up a parenthesis, and we're going to use the conversion factor, and we're going to think what goes on the top, what goes on the bottom. Well, I'm going to put 1 kilogram on the bottom and then 1,000 grams on the top. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want the kilograms to be on opposite sides of the division sign so that they cancel. And even if you do it wrong, you could just check it. And then if you notice you did it wrong, switch them. All right, so kilograms cancel and we're left with grams, which is what we want. So now you just need to put that in the calculator exactly as it's written. 39 times 1,000 over 1 should give you 39,000 grams. So the answer is 39,000. Okay, question 6. So they tell us that f of x is equal to 8. So we're going to put that in right here. We get 8 equals 4x. We divide both sides by 4 and we get 2 equals x. So the answer is 2. We could also do this on Desmos. Let's go do that. So I typed in the equation, and then I could type in f of x equals 8, but how about since f of x and y are interchangeable, I just write y equals 8 so that Desmos doesn't get confused. I click on where it meets, and I see that happens when x is 2. Okay, question 7. So I have two right triangles. They tell me that, and they tell me that B and E are right angles. So I'm going to label these in the same order with respect, and in such a way that B and E are the right angle. So watch, I'm going to do A. I'm not going to put B over here because that wouldn't be a right angle. I'm going to do A, B, C. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. D, E, F. Okay, looks good. Two congruent right triangles. And B and E are both right angles. Okay, so they tell me the measure of angle A is 18 degrees. And it's asking me about angle F. Well, A and D correspond. So, and you can see that in the similarity statement too. See how they're both first? So D must also be 18 degrees. And then to find the measure of angle F, the two acute angles in a right triangle must add up to 90 degrees. So I just do 90 minus 18. We call that complementary angles. And I get 72 degrees. And just in case you're curious, angle C is also 72 degrees. So it's asking us about angle F. So we go with choice B, 72 degrees. Okay, question 8. So to tackle this one, I'm going to use the knowledge that corresponding angles are congruent when we have parallel lines. They tell you that M and N are parallel. They say that in the question. So to help you see it, I'm going to label them with colors. So the top left is congruent to the top left. The top right is congruent to the top right. The bottom left is congruent to the bottom left. And the bottom right is congruent to the bottom right. So how about I go ahead and call this guy 33 degrees because they correspond. And now I see, oh, this makes a lot of sense. These two angles next to each other, they form a 180 degree angle. We call that a linear pair. So x plus 33 must equal 180. I subtract 33 from both sides. And I get x is equal to 147, which is answer choice D. Okay, question 9. They want me to solve for y, so I should probably eliminate x or just solve for x. I don't know, whatever's easier. There's a bunch of ways to do this one. I'm noticing they kind of teed me up to eliminate, so I don't know, why don't I just add the two equations? So 3x plus negative 3x, that goes away, that's 0. And we have a y on the left side, and on the other side we have 12 plus negative 6, which is 6. And that is choice B. We could also do this on Desmos. Let's go do that. Okay, I typed in both equations. I double click where they meet, and I see the y coordinate of the solution is 6. Okay, question 10. So they want us to factor. The first thing I always do when I factor is look for a GCF. I go over this in my Ottocento number 4 on factoring. Definitely check that out. So I'm looking at 9x squared plus 5x. I'm thinking, what do they both have in common? Well, 9 and 5 have no common factors besides 1. But they do both have an x. They both have at least one x. So I'm going to pull out an x. And then to find out what's left, you kind of just divide. So 9x squared divided by x is 9x. And then 5x divided by x is positive 5. So we get x times 9x plus 5. And that is looking a lot like choice A. We could also guess and check using Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I typed in the expression from the question and then choice A. Notice how when I highlight it, it perfectly replaces the red graph. That means that it has infinitely many solutions, and that means the expressions are equivalent. I bet if you typed in B, C, or D, they would look very different from the 9x squared plus 5x graph. Okay, question 11. So this is testing us on distance equals rate times time. So it says combined total of 14 miles. So this person is basically, they're doing a distance walking and then a distance running for a total of 14 miles. So each of these, I can do D equals RT on each of these. So the rate for walking, see speed, 3 miles per hour, that's a rate, is 3. And then the time for walking is W. So I can rewrite the distance d sub w as rate times time, 3w. And then similarly for the running, I have a speed of 5 miles per hour for r hours. So instead of d, I'll put rt, so 5 times r. Again, r is just the time. I know that's confusing. R in the problem means the time of running. It doesn't mean rate. Equals 14. And that is looking a lot like choice A. So the distance from walking plus the distance running equals 14. Then we just replace it using d equals rt. Okay, question 12. The equation for the perimeter of a rectangle is 2L plus 2W. The length is 4. And the width is 9. So 2 times 4 plus 2 times 9. That gives us 8 plus 18, which gives us 26, which is choice D. Okay, question 13. So whenever you have a line in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, m is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. So they tell me right here that the slope is 1/9, so m is 1/9. And y-intercepts always have an x of 0. So the y-coordinate that goes with an x of 0 is your b. So b is 14. So I can write the equation as y equals 1/9 x plus 14, which gives us choice D. Okay, question 14. I have a great short going over the Pythagorean theorem. Definitely go check that out. So when we're trying to find a missing side of a right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. It's on the reference sheet. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Really important, guys. That's not the a and b from the problems necessarily. Like a and b are the legs, which are the sides that form the right angle. And then c is the hypotenuse. So they just happen to label it for us, but don't expect them to always do that. Anyway, so they told us a is 4 and b is 5. And how about I call, we just leave that guy as c. So I'll do 4 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. 4 squared plus 5 squared is 41. Now I take the square root of both sides and I get c is equal to the square root of 41. I don't need to put a plus or minus because lengths can't be negative. And I don't know why they wrote it like this, but d is equivalent to square root of 41. As we just talked about, 4 squared plus 5 squared is 41. Okay, question 15. So for this one, I'm going to try to write an equation that kind of represents the problem. So how about each package of party hats costs $3. So how about I do 3p for the party hats, and then plus how much she spent on cupcakes. So $1 for each of the cupcakes. So 1, and then if I buy C cupcakes, how about? It's not really proper to write 1C, but how about I just leave it that so that it's clear? Leave it like that so it's clear. Okay, and she spent a total of $71. And then it tells us she bought 10 packages of party hats. So P equals 10. 3 times 10, 1C is just C, equals 71. 30 plus C equals 71. So I subtract 30 from both sides and I get C equals 41. And that is our answer. Okay, question 16. I go over this in great detail in my Ochento number 5 on function translations. Definitely go check that out. I'm just going to assume you've already watched it. So we've got f of x equals 7x cubed. And to find this function g of x, we're going to do our equation for a function translation, f of x minus h plus k. So it says that we would like to shift the graph down 2 units. So there is no left or right shift. So this guy I can just kind of cross out. H is just 0. There is no left or right shift. Doesn't mention it, right? But they do mention a vertical shift. So that would mean k down is in the negative y direction. So it would be -2. So g of x is equal to f of x. Remember we said there's no h in this problem. And then plus k. So plus -2. In other words, -2. And f of x we can just replace with 7x cubed. And we get g of x equals 7x cubed minus 2. And that is choice D. I suppose if you were stuck, you could have graphed the original and then graphed the answer choices to see which one looks the same, but just got moved 2 down. But like, you're going to get way harder questions where that's not going to work. So you really got to know how to do this. Definitely go check out that video I was talking about. Okay, question 17. So for this one, I'm noticing that x plus 7 shows up in both these. So you see, I'm going to put this value 10 in for x plus 7. So I get 10, but you see that's squared, so I got to square it, equals y. 100 equals y. And I don't even need to do anything else. The only answer choice with a y of 100 is A. We can also do this on Desmos. Let's go do that. Okay, I typed in the two equations. Let's zoom out and see where they meet. And I also get 3, 100. Okay, question 18. Probably the easiest way to do this is to just pick out 2 points from the line, not from the dots, from the line, right? And use the slope formula. So I kind of like this one up here that looks like 0, 14. And I'm not really seeing another one that goes through a grid marker, but how about I use this one? It kind of looks like 13, 0. I don't know. Not perfect, but it should get me close enough to the answer, right? So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So how about I do 14 minus 0 over 0 minus 13. Let me just make it clear what I'm doing. I called this guy x2, y2, and I called this guy x1, y1. So 14 minus 0 over 0 minus 13. Let me put that in a calculator. And I'm getting negative 1.08, something like that. And that is closest to answer choice B. Okay, question 19. I'll go over this in great detail in my auto channel number 6 on linear systems. Please go watch it. So, it's probably the best video I've ever made. All right, so this one says it has no solution. These are all pretty close to slope-intercept form, so let's use that. When we have no solution in slope-intercept form, we have the same slope and different y-intercepts. So that's going to be what we're looking for. You see they're only different by the x's. The x's just need to be moved to the other side. So let's do that with all of them really quick. So the first one, I'm going to add 6x to both sides to get y equals 6x plus 18. Second one, I add 6x to both sides to get y equals 6x plus 22. Third one, I add 12x to both sides to get y equals 12x plus 36. And the fourth one, I add 12x to both sides and get y equals 12x plus 18. Okay, so we're looking for the same slope. So 6 and then 6. I'm thinking it's B because we want also different y-intercepts. So 18 and 22 are different. They are not the same number. So we get choice B. We can also do this by guess and check using Desmos. So let's go do that. Okay, so I typed in choice A. And as you can see, they're right on top of each other. That means it has infinitely many solutions. We want no solutions, so we want parallel lines. Let's try choice B. Okay, I typed in choice B, and choice B is looking good. It has no solution. The lines are parallel. I bet if you tried C and D, they would not be parallel. Okay, question 20. So we got this function, and it says we want to find the x-intercept. So whenever you want to find an x-intercept, we set y equals to 0. For y-intercepts, we set x equal to 0. For x-intercepts, we set y equal to 0. So 0 equals 7x minus 84. I'll add 84 to both sides, and I get 84 equals 7x. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 7, and I get x equals 12. And that gives us choice D. We can also do this on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, I typed in the function. Now I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to click where it crosses the x-axis. And we get 12, 0. Okay, question 21. So they give us an equation and a point. Pretty much every time that happens, you're going to plug in the point. So it might help you if you write the point using ordered pair notation. The first number is x, the second number is y, so this would be 3, 2375. So that's what we're going to plug in. So y is 2375, so 2375 equals 19 times a to the x, a to the 3. Divide both sides by 19. And we get 125 equals a cubed. Now we take the cube root of both sides. We get rid of the cube. And we get a equals 5. So now we know the full equation is g of x equals 19 times 5 to the x. And we can find g of 4 just by making x 4. So 19 times 5 to the 4th. And that gives us 11875. And that is the answer. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could regress this, but the algebra was much easier. I don't know, let me go through it in like 10 seconds. Okay, so I put the point in. Now I'm going to do y1 tilde 19 times a to the x1. And it tells me a equals 5. That's what we got. So let me type in g of x equals 19 times a to the x. And if I type in g of 4, I get the same answer, 11875. Okay, question 22. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 1 on percents and in my shorts on percents. So it's essentially just asking us for the percent multiplier for a 7% increase. For an increase, we do 1 plus p slash 100. For a decrease, we do 1 minus p slash 100. So we are going to do 1 plus, because it's an increase, 7 slash 100. And we get 1.07, so that means the 2016 population is 1.07 times as big. So the answer is choice C. Okay, this is the beginning of Module 2B, question 1. So right away, it says at a constant rate. When we have a constant rate of change, that means we have a linear function. So right away, I'm going to cross off the ones that say exponential. And I know it must be decreasing because it says descends. If you didn't know what that word descend means, you can look at these numbers, 9,500 to 5,000. It's getting smaller, right? It's decreasing. So that tells us it's decreasing. So we're going to go with decreasing linear, which is choice B. Okay, question 2. So we have y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. So the slope of line K is 17/7. And when we have parallel lines, we know those must have the same slope. So the slope of a parallel line, in this case line J, is the same number. So it's also 17/7. And that gives us choice B. Okay, question 3. So whenever we have y equals mx plus b, m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is 30. More specifically, because y-intercepts always have an x of 0, we would say the coordinates are 0, 30. Now I'm going to interpret what this means without looking at the answer choices at all so I don't get tricked. So it says that the x is after making x popsicles. So when he made 0 popsicles made, and now let's see where it talks about the function 30. It says the function f approximates the volume in fluid ounces of juice Caleb had remaining. So we had 30 fluid ounces juice remaining. Okay, now that I have that written down, let's look at the choices. Okay, 2 of them don't even mention the number 30. So I mean, that's got to be wrong. So A and B are out. So now I just got to read carefully and tell between C and D. So this says 30 fluid ounces of juice for each popsicle. That would maybe be the slope. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that would be the slope. Like we had 5 fluid ounces of juice for each popsicle because the slope is -5. So this is wrong. It's not talking about the y-intercept. And we didn't write anything down about for each popsicle. Let's look at what's right about C. So he had approximately 30 fluid ounces of juice. That sounds right. And then it says, when he began to make the popsicles. That's just an in-context way of saying X equals 0 popsicles made. He hasn't made any, so he just started making popsicles. The answer is C. D is close to being right. Perhaps it's kind of like talking about the slope. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, A is probably the correct interpretation of the slope, 5 fluid ounces of juice for each popsicle. So if the question was asking you about the interpretation of the slope, perhaps A would be correct. Okay, question 4. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 13 on basic quadratics. Please go watch it. Also more in Ottocento number 16 on advanced quadratics. So vertex form, a times x minus h squared plus k. I hold up the equation. You guys can kind of see, okay, A is -16. H, we got to change the sign because there's a minus sign here. So A is -16. H, it kind of looks like -5.6, but it's really +5.6 because of that minus sign in front of the H. I go over that in the video. A is 502. He's got a positive sign in front of him, so we don't need to change it. Positive sign in front of the K, plus K. All right, so H comma K is the vertex, so the vertex is 5.6 comma 502. And really important, we should realize that since A is -16, that means that the parabola is opening down, and that means that the vertex constitutes a maximum. So let's see where it talks about X and Y. So X is the seconds after it is launched into the air, and Y is the estimated height, Y in feet of the toy rocket. Okay, so probably like 5 seconds. I'm not even looking at the choices. 5 seconds after it is launched into the air, the rocket has a height of 502 feet. Even just putting these units here can help a lot. All right, now that we got all that, we got max, 5.6 seconds, 502 feet. Let's look at the choices. So it seems like the only one that says, they all say maximum, and the only one that says 502 feet and 5.6 seconds is choice B. So that is the answer. This question can be made a lot easier if you graph it, so let's do that. Okay, so I typed in the equation. I'm just going to zoom out. It looks terrible, but this will tell me the vertex. You can kind of see it's opening downward as well. So let's click on the vertex. I get 5.6 comma 502. Pretty much for any problem, guys, like this, the x-axis is going to be time. So 5.6 seconds, 502 feet. Okay, question 5. So they give me a point in function notation. Why don't we change it to an ordered pair? The first number is x, second number is y, so I'm going to write it as 5 comma 32. Whenever the SAT gives me an equation and a point, almost always I'm going to plug in that point. So y is 32, so 32 equals x is 5. 4 times 5 plus k times 5 minus 1. Okay, 32 equals 20 plus k times 5 minus 1 is 4, so 4k. Subtract 20 from both sides, I get 12 equals 4k. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and I get 3 equals k. So we now know the function is f of x equals 4x plus 3 times x minus 1, because k is 3. And we can do f of 10. And to do that, you just replace all the x's with 10. So 4 times 10 plus 3 times 10 minus 1. So that's 40 plus 27, which is 67. And that is the answer. We can definitely do probably most of this on Desmos. Let's go do that. Okay, guys, so there's probably ways to figure out K using Desmos, but like you saw, those like 2 steps of algebra really wasn't that much work, right? So I'd probably just get K by hand and then type it in. And then this last part you can kind of gloss over. So just type in f of 10 and we get 67. Okay, question 6. So I drew 2 congruent right triangles where B and E are at the right angles. You'll also notice, guys, this is really important. ABC, so I went like this, ABC, like down and to the left. You got to do the same thing for the other one so that the angles are in the right spot. So DEF. If you don't make your drawing easy to follow, we're going to get confused, probably make a mistake. All right, so it says the measure of angle A is 18 degrees. Angle D corresponds with A. I can tell that looking at the congruency statement and also my picture. So this guy is also 18 degrees. The 2 acute angles in a right triangle add up to 90 degrees. So I'm going to do 90 minus 18, and I get 72 degrees. And then angle C corresponds to F. For the same reason, he is also 72 degrees. The question's asking us about angle F, which is over here. So we're going to go with B, 72 degrees. Okay, question 7. I think you're way more likely to get this right if you just do this by graphing it on Desmos. So let's go do that. Okay, so I typed in the system, and then I typed in all the points and labeled them, so it was really easy for me to see. The solution set to the system of inequalities is where the red and blue overlap. So you'll see that's like this. If you have like 4 pieces of pizza, it's like the piece of pizza on the right. D is the only one in that area. So D is our answer. Okay, question 8. So I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 9 on basic statistics. Please go check it out. For median, you can just eyeball it, but I would probably just check real quick anyway. The position of median is n plus 1 over 2. So let's see. They don't tell us, which is really annoying. How many are there? 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And then is there the same over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so n is 17. So if you do 17 plus 1 divided by 2, we get a position of median. 18 over 2 is 9. So we're looking for the 9th data value. So if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so the median of the first one is 13. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the median of the second one is 13. So the medians are equal. So choice 1 is correct. Now we look at choice 2. Standard deviation is a measure of spread. So if you guys can tell, these things are like symmetrical. So the median and also probably the mean is 13. Standard deviation is like how spread out they are from the mean. Well, they're not arranged exactly the same spatially. You can kind of tell on average, there's a lot more that are farther away from the mean in dataset B than in dataset A. Dataset A is a lot less spread out. It's a lot more centered around the mean. See how these guys are here? We got 3 right on the mean, but here we only got 1 right on the mean. So dataset B is more spread out. So it's got a larger standard deviation. So the standard deviation of B is greater than the standard deviation of A. So it says they are equal, which is not true. We just said dataset B has a bigger standard deviation, so this is wrong. So we're going with 1 only, choice A, as our answer. If you really wanted to, you could go brute force, type in all those data points. You'd have to type in like 34 values and a bunch of calculator commands into Desmos, but it would take so much longer. I really don't suggest you do that. Okay, question 9. So whenever we have an exponential that looks like this, which I go over in my shorts, I got 3 shorts, exponentials plus time. Definitely go check those out. 3 shorts, exponentials plus time. Go to my shorts tab. So whenever it looks like that, the number in front is the initial amount. So we have P, they tell us we have 12,000 bacteria initially. 12,000 2 to the RT. So that's what C is. They're basically telling us that, this thing here. All right. Now I could use the point they gave us to solve. So 4 hours later, the scientist measures 24,000 bacteria. So I'm going to make 24,000 equals 12,000 times 2 to the R times 4. I'm going to divide both sides by 12,000. I get 2 equals 2 to the 4R. You see, this is 2 to the 1. So I can use one-to-one property because they have the same base, that these guys equal because they're both 2 as a base. So 1 equals 4R. Divide both sides by 4, and I get R equals 1/4. Another way to think about it is to just use that equation that I came up with at the beginning and just read the question very carefully. It's like A times B T over N. So like I said, initial value is 12,000. 12,000, 24,000, that's doubling. Hopefully you guys can kind of see that. So the multiplier is 2. See, I'm not even looking at the question, right? I don't even need to read the paragraph. I can just figure that out. And T over the interval. So they said that it's essentially doubling every 4 hours. So I put over 4. And then they just want me to rewrite it. The SAT does this all the time, where they don't like that weird fraction in the exponent. They pull the fraction in front. So when you pull this guy up here, you have to reciprocal him. That's how dividing fractions works. So the reciprocal of 4 is 1/4. So I would write 1/4 T. You see, I really didn't need to barely read the question to figure that out. So you might get a harder one where you have to piece this together more. They were really nice giving us all this extra information that they didn't need to tell us. So, okay, question 10. You're definitely going to want to know these two equations for cubes. The volume of a cube is S cubed, and the surface area of a cube is 6S squared because there's 6 faces. All right, so volume equals S cubed. They told us 474,552. And I'm going to figure out what S is, so I will take the cube root of both sides. And let's see, what's the cube root of 474,552? That is 78, so 78 is equal to S. And now they want us to find the surface area. So surface area equals 6S squared. So we will do surface area is equal to 6 times 78 squared. And that gives us a final answer of 36504. And that is the answer. Okay, question 11. So I'm noticing that these things kind of show up in the question. You guys see they did that on purpose so that we could see what's happening. So I'm going to make a substitution. How about I call 8x little a, and then I call little b 7y. And then the questions essentially would then just be asking me what's a plus b. So again, we want to find a plus b, and I'm going to make that substitution. So watch what happens. 2a plus 4b equals 12. And then negative 2a plus 4b equals 12. Okay, that's going to be way easier to tackle. And we want to find a plus b. So I'm noticing this is kind of setting me up for elimination. So why don't I just add the two equations? It's already perfect. I've got 2a and negative 2a. So those guys will go away. And I'll be left with 8b equals 24. Divide both sides by 8, and I get b equals 3. Okay, so now I just need to find a. So to do that, how about I go back to the first equation, and I do 2a plus 4 times 3 equals 12. So I get 2a plus 12 equals 12. I subtract 12 from both sides, and I get 2a equals 0. Divide both sides by 2, and I get a equals 0. So a plus b, or 8x plus 7y, must equal 0 plus 3, which equals 3. I don't know how we're going to fare, but I think we could still do this entirely on Desmos. Let's go try it. Okay, guys, I typed in these two equations. And I'm going to export this point and label it. And how about, I already used A and B and I don't want to confuse you. So how about I call X and Y just as constants to not confuse Desmos when I call it U and V. So U equals 0 and V equals 0.42857. And I will now do 8x plus 7y, or in other words, 8u plus 7v. And I get 2.999. So, you know, the answer is probably 3. So even if you didn't know how to do any of this, you could still get the answer. You probably still want to know how to do it by hand, though. Okay, question 12. I go over this in great detail in my Ogento number 2 on unit conversions. Please go watch it. I'm just going to assume you've already watched it. All right, so this question is asking us about square units, but the conversion factor is not already in terms of square units. So what I need to do is I need to square both sides of the conversion factor. So 1 squared is just 1, so I get 1 mile squared is equal to 1760 squared. That's some really big number, so I'm just going to call it 1760 squared. You can compute it and write it down if you want. Yards squared. That's going to be our new conversion factor. We're going to use that. So I've got 4.36 square miles. And now I'm like, what goes on the top? What goes on the bottom? Well, it seems 1 square mile would go on the bottom, and 1760 squared yard squared would go on the top. This is because we want the units to cancel. See how mild squared is on opposite sides of the green fence I just drew? So that means they go away. And we are left with square yards, which is what we want. So now if we go and type it in exactly as we wrote it, we should get the right answer. Lots of people mess up at the very end just because they try to do math in their head or they don't type it in exactly as they wrote it. Don't let that be you. Okay, 1760 squared over 1. And I am getting 13505,536, and that is looking a lot like answer choice D. Okay, question 13. I think this question will make a lot more sense. Be able to figure out what we need to do if we first plot these points on Desmos. So let's go do that. Okay, guys, so all I did here was I typed in all the points, labeled them, and then I used the polygon command to plot the triangles. And then I also picked a random positive constant for k. So I just picked 3. Oh, this makes way more sense. This is kind of telling me what they're testing me on. So do you see how if I move this slider, k can be any positive number, but the triangle, the bigger triangle keeps getting bigger and smaller, but do you see how it maintains the same like general shape? What they want you to realize is that it doesn't matter what k is. These two triangles are always similar. We're going to go back to the whiteboard and just work with that. Okay, so these two triangles are similar. So they tell us that angle Q has a measure of E degrees. So I'll put that on the picture. So all the corresponding angles are equal. So Q goes with angle M. So he must also be equal to T degrees. And they want us to find the measure of angle N. So how about I call him X? And you'll notice this point here, a vertical line meets a horizontal line. Those are always perpendicular. So that's a right angle right there. So if you look at the big outer triangle, they have to add up to 180 degrees, right? So T plus X plus 90 must equal 180. T plus X, if I subtract 90 from both sides, I get 90. And now they want me to find X, the measure of angle N. So if I subtract T from both sides, I get X equals 90 minus T degrees. And that gives us choice C. Okay, question 14. So we want to buy, I'm going to make X the small candles and Y the number of large candles. We want to buy, in total, a minimum of 200 candles. So X plus Y. Minimum is a keyword, inequality keyword, that tells us greater than or equal to. Now we've got 4.9 per small candle. Okay, that sounds like multiplication. We're gonna multiply the number of candles times the cost per candle to get the total cost on the small candles. So 4.9x plus, now for large candles, 11.6 per. So I'm gonna do 11.6y by a similar logic. It says we have a budget of $2,200. So budget is an in-context way of saying a financial maximum. When we say maximum, that's an inequality keyword that tells us less than or equal to. So budget means less than or equal to 2,200. So now there's a really long algebraic way to approach this. It's not very practical. If you really want to know how to do it, I would suggest just reading the College Board explanation. They're probably going to do a better job than me, honestly. I wouldn't do it that way regardless. I would just graph it. So let's go graph it. Okay, so I graphed these two inequalities. And now what we should do to figure out the answer, but by the way, guys, I glossed over this. The question says, what is the maximum number of large candles? So it's asking about y. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now what we're going to do to figure it out, the solution set to the inequality is like that red and blue bottom right pizza slice that's like trending southeast. And we have to recognize that when we buy something, it's got to be an integer. It's got to be a whole number. Like I can't buy half a candle, right? They're not going to sell me half a candle. They're not going to sell me 0.3 of a candle. They're not going to sell me 0.4 of a candle. So there's got to be integers. So I click on where these guys meet. That's the highest point, right? Y is at the highest point. And I go, ooh, unfortunate, 182.08, and that other number is not an integer. They both need to be integers. So I'm going to start guessing and checking y values that are smaller. I'm going to work my way down into the pizza slice and try the biggest integer smaller than 182.08. Well, the biggest integer smaller than that is 182. So I'm going to write y equals 182. And we'll see if we get a point in there that gives me an integer value for x and y. Well, according to these 2 points, when y is 182, x must be between 18 and 18.12. Inclusive, because those lines are solid. Well, 18 is an integer, and 18 is between inclusive 18 and 18.122. So this point actually here is probably our answer. So to do this optimization, we would buy 18 small candles and 182 large. The question is asking how many large, so our answer is 182. If we didn't get an integer in between those two x values that I highlighted, you would just keep going. You'd be like, okay, let's try 181. Does y equals 181 have any integers? And you see this one probably has a bunch, right? It's got 19 to 20.4, so it's got 19 and 20. So that one would have been good, but we were good at 182. That's the maximum. 18, we can have 18 small candles. That's a whole number. And we can certainly have 182 large candles. That is also a whole number. I hope this helps. Okay, question 15. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 7 on special right triangles. I also have a short that goes over squares, which covers this concept. Goes over like everything you need to know about squares in like less than a minute. Definitely go watch that. It's in the shorts tab. I pulled this graphic from that short. So we've got a square inside a circle. The concept I want you to understand is that the diagonal of the square is a diameter, and squares, when cut along their diagonal, are 45, 45, 90 triangles. So if you look at the reference sheet, s root 2, the diameter is equal to s root 2. So they tell us the radius. So the diameter is 2 times the radius. So 2 times 20 root 2 over 2. So the diameter is 20 root 2. And that means that side here is 20 root 2. And hopefully you guys can kind of see, oh, well, 20 root 2 is equal to s root 2. If I divide both sides by root 2, I get 20 equals s. So the side length of the square is s. And I'm surprised. I think that's it. That's the answer. Choice A is 20. Okay, question 16. I go over the sum in my circles video, but I go over it a lot in my short on equation of circles, so definitely check that out. The equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So how about this? There's a couple ways to do it. How about we find the center and the radius of all of them just for the sake of the practice? So I look at these numbers and I get the center. I change the sign of both of them because there's a minus in the equation. So 8, 8 is the center. And I take the square root of this guy over here to find the radius. So the square root of 16 is 4. All right, now I'm going to do that same process. The center of this one is 8, 4. And the radius is 4. The center of this one is 4, 9. And the radius is the same. Square root of 16 is 4. And the radius of this one, there's like a 0 here that's like implied. So the center is 0, 9. And the radius is 4. And now you could kind of like, with your mind's eye, be like, which one is like 4 away from the x-axis? Well, it would be the one centered at 4, 9. Because look, if I drew like 4 away in like all 4 directions like that, you see it touches the y-axis once. So choice C is the answer. Now, if you weren't sure on this, it's probably easier to just graph them and guess and check. So let's do that. Okay, so the equation for the y-axis is x equals 0. And I plotted choice A. That doesn't intersect the y-axis at any time. They don't touch at all. So 0 points of intersection. That one's wrong. Okay, choice B. This one also does not touch the y-axis at all. 0 points of intersection. So this one's wrong. Okay, choice C. Looks like it touches the y-axis at 1 point at 0, 9. That's our answer. Let's see what D looks like. Okay, choice D actually intersects the y-axis at 2 points. So that one is wrong as well. We definitely did a good job picking C as the answer. Okay, question 17. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 6 on linear systems. Please go watch it, guys. It's the best video I've ever made. There's tons of examples, and there's a free worksheet you can download so you can try out the strategies yourself. All right, so we're in slope-intercept form. When we have a system with no solution in slope-intercept form, that means they have the same slope and different y-intercepts. So we want the same slope and different y-intercepts. Pretty much with all these answer choices, the only thing I need to do to put it in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, is to move these x terms over to the other side. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add 6x to both sides, and I get y equals 6x plus 18. I do the same thing with b, y equals 6x plus 22. With choice C, I add 12x to both sides, and I get y equals 12x plus 36. And with choice D, I add 12x to both sides, and I get y equals 12x plus 18. So we want the slopes to be the same. The slope in the original graph is 6. So C and D are already looking wrong. Those have a slope of 12. And now to choose between A and B, we want a different y-intercept, so not the same. So this y-intercept is 18, and this y-intercept is 22. So 22 is different from 18, so that is the answer, choice B. We can also graph these on Desmos and solve it using guess and check. Let's go do that. Okay, for no solution, we're looking for a graph of parallel lines. So I'm looking at choice A right now. And you see choice A, the blue is right on top of the red. So that means they have infinitely many solutions, not no solution. Let's try choice B. Okay, choice B. These lines look to be perfectly parallel. They're never going to cross, so they have no solution. Choice B is the answer. Okay, question 18. So when we combine rational expressions, we generally want to expand the numerator and factor the denominators. So y plus 12 over x minus 8, there's not really anything going on there anyway. Plus, we're going to expand the numerator, y times x minus 8. Well, that's xy. And then minus y times negative 8. Y times negative 8 is negative 8y. All right, with the bottom, though, we have a common factor we can pull out. I'm noticing they both have at least one x, and they both have they both have a y. So I'm going to pull out one x and one y, or in other words, xy. If you divide both those by xy, you're left with x squared over y, x squared y divided by xy. That's just x. And then negative 8xy divided by xy, that's just negative 8. So we get xy, x minus 8. Oh, you can kind of see now if I look at these denominators, x minus 8, xy, x minus 8. The least common multiple is xy times x minus 8. That's the least common denominator, xy times x minus 8. The maximum number of x minus 8s present in a denominator is 1. The maximum number of y's present is 1. And the maximum number of x's present is 1. Most people, they just look at this and they go, oh, the one on the left is missing an xy. I bet I got to do something with an xy. And you'd be right. So you don't have to overthink it. We're going to multiply the top and bottom by xy to get a common denominator. So let's see, we get, this one just stays the same, xy, x minus 8, xy minus 8y. And now we're going to do plus xy times x minus 8. Keep those guys factored for now. Xy times y plus 12. So that's xy squared plus 12xy. Okay, now we got the same denominator. We can combine them. So the denominator stays the same. And this is addition, so I don't need to worry about doing any changes with the sign. That's good. And let's see, we're going to combine them. And I want to just combine the like terms. So xy squared, let me go back to blue. Xy squared, 12xy plus 1xy, that's 13xy. And then negative 8y. Okay. I don't even need to expand that denominator. Well, maybe I do. Let's see, that is looking a lot like choice C or D. I think choice A or B is definitely out. Let me expand the xy times x minus 8. Well, that's what we had at the beginning. X squared y minus 8xy. So I believe it is choice C. You could also guess and check this on Desmos. So let's go do that. Okay, guys, so this would be very time consuming, but you can do it. And honestly, it's one of the last questions, so maybe it's kind of worth it to get it right if you have time. So you could make the x's and y's like a's and b's and plug in random numbers and then figure out the answer that way. How about for this one, because it has x and y, we can graph expressions with x and y. One thing you can do is you can set it equal to a number to make it graph it. So I just set them all equal to 1. And now we're going to like guess and check. So let's look at A. Not the same. Okay, B. Not the same graph. Okay, C. The purple perfectly replaces the red. That means they have infinitely many solutions, which means they're equivalent. C is probably the answer. Let's look at D. All right, D is no good. That's a totally different graph as well. So whether we use guess and check or we get a common denominator and do it by hand, we get the same answer, choice C. Okay, question 19. This is a literal equation question. It wants us to get Q by itself. So I'm going to get rid of all these fractions by clearing the denominators. Which I don't do a problem like this, but I go over how to clear denominators in, I think it's like Ottocento number 14, something like that, matching coefficients plus clearing denominators. Anyway, the denominators are P, Q, R, and S. Well, there's nothing in common, right? So the least common denominator is just all of them multiplied together. So the LCD is just P, Q, R, S. So we're going to multiply the entire equation by P, Q, R, S. So on the left side, 20 over P, the P's go away, and you're left with 20 Q, R, S. Let me give myself a little bit more room here. So 20 Q, R, S. When you do 20 over Q, the Q's go away, and you're left with 20 PRS. And then minus, when you do R, the R goes away, 20 PQS. And then when you do minus 20 over S, so the S's go away, minus 20 PQR. You actually learn, you do problems like this kind of like in calculus, but it's probably been a while since you've seen this. This is probably foreign to most people, but What we want to do is we want to get all the q's to one side of the equation. So all the terms I just highlighted, they have to get to the same side. So I'm going to move these two guys over here, keep everything positive. So I'm going to add 20 PQS to both sides. And I'm going to add 20 PQR to both sides. All right, so these guys should go away. And we get 20 QRS plus 20 PQS plus 20 PQR equals 20 PRS. Now, this is kind of confusing. We want to get Q. So what we're going to do is, we're not going to pull out the GCF on the left side. We're just going to pull out a Q. That way we get Q by itself. So we're like isolating via factoring. Very strange. So if I pull out a Q, I get 20 RS plus 20 PS plus 20 ER equals 20 PRS. And now I'm going to divide both sides by this big mess to get the Q by itself. So I get Q equals 20 PRS over 20 RS plus 20 PS plus 20 PR. And you'll notice every single term is divisible by 20. So I could divide all of them by 20, divide the top and bottom both by 20, and all the 20s will go away. And I will be left with PRS over RS plus PS plus PR, which is looking very similar to choice C. And that is the answer. I'm willing to bet lots of people pick choice D just because of all the 20s, but you'll notice what makes it wrong is there's no 20 up there. Remember, we had a 20 next to the PRS at the beginning. Great, so the answer is choice C. Okay, question 20. I go over this in great detail in my Ottocento number 23 on discriminant and in linear quadratic systems. Please go check that out. I'm just going to assume you've already watched it. So I'm going to try to get this equation in standard form. So I'm going to distribute that x, and I get kx squared minus 56x equals negative 16. Now I'm going to add 16 to both sides. And I get kx squared minus 56x plus 16 is equal to 0, where a is k, b is negative 56, and c is 16. Well, they told me it has no real solution, so that means b squared minus 4ac must be less than 0. So I get negative 56 squared minus 4 times k times 16 is less than 0. Negative 56 in parentheses squared is 3136. And then negative 4 times 16 is minus 64. I get negative 64k. So now I am going to subtract 3136 from both sides, and I get negative 64k is less than negative 3136. And now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 64, and I get 49. But when I divide both sides by a negative in my algebra, I have to flip the inequality sign. So k must be greater than 49. Now you'll notice we glossed over this. It says k is an integer constant. What is the least possible value of k? Lots of people would do all that and put 49. But that doesn't work because 49 is not greater than 49. The first integer bigger than 49 is 50. So the answer to this question is 50. We can also graph this to make sure we did it right, so let's go do that. Okay, I graphed the original equation by breaking up into a system. You always want to do that whenever you're concerned about how many solutions the equation has. I go over that in my Desmos videos. All right, so you see if you put 49, that's no good. That doesn't have no real solution. That has one real solution. So, but if we try 50 or 51 or 52, etc., you see the red and blue never touch, so it has no real solution. So 50 is the least possible value of k. We did a good job. Okay, question 21. I go over how to do these in great detail in my Desmos number 19 on parameterization. I really don't think there's any benefit to the by hand method for the vast majority of people, so let's jump to Desmos. Okay, so I typed in these two lines, and I noticed they're the same line. That's helpful. Got infinitely many solutions. I'm going to set up a slider for r, so I'll type in like r equals 1. And we don't care about that circle that it plots, so you could just hide that. And now I will type in all of the points. Okay, guys, I typed that all in. Took me about a minute once you get good at typing on Desmos. And now what I'm going to do is the question says, for each real number r, which of the following points lies on the graph of each equation? So in other words, the graph of this blue line for each real number r. So always. So if I move the slider around and I look, which one is always on the line like a ball on a string? The only one that does that is choice B. So a little bit time consuming on the front end, but once you type it in, you can figure it out in a couple seconds. Okay, question 22. So I'm going to pick, I'm going to make a table with x and the y, which is the function f. X, they say, is the number of hours. So this part here is telling me a point. So for 2 hours, he charges a total of $220. And then this one here tells me another point. For 5 hours, he charges a total of $400. So I could do the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, find the slope. So that's 400 minus 220 over 5 minus 2. So that's 180 over 3, which is 60. And now I could write the partial equation, y equals 60x plus b, mx plus b. And then I could plug in a point. So how about I do the first one? 220 equals 60 times 2 plus b. That's 120. Subtract 120 from both sides. And I get 100 equals b. So the slope is 60. And the y-intercept is 100. The only one that does that is choice A. We can also do this entirely on Desmos, so let's go do that. Okay, so I just made a table and typed those points in. I'm going to find out where they are by zooming in, click on the little magnifying glass. And now I just click on the automatic regression symbol. And I get the equation is 60x plus 100. I have no idea why this was the last question on the exam. Okay, that completes the lesson. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more digital SAT math content. And if you're interested in my tutoring services, the link to my website will be in the description. I tutor SAT math and all math subjects from about 7th grade to AP/early college level. Thanks for stopping by, and good luck studying.